I'm Pam Hartwell-Herrero, the Executive Director of Sustainable Fairfax, and we are here today at the Sustainability Center in Fairfax, California. I'm going to teach you 5 different ways you can compost your waste. Come on back. Here we are with our first composting system. First of all, you might want to know, why should I be composting my waste? We work with a lot of different sustainability issues, and waste is one of the big ones. Most of the landfills in this country are filling up, and what we've discovered is about 40 to 60% of basic household waste can and should be composted at your home environment. For people who live in apartments or have a small amount of space, this is a really great worm bin. And it not only is it contained and holds your food scraps, but it also is an easy way to make worm tea. When you buy a bin like this and you're ready to get started, it's good to start with a little layer of mulch, maybe 2 or 3 inches of something rich. It could be compost already, it could be mango mulch, it could be plain dirt from your soil. Then you want to add worms, which you can purchase at most nurseries, and then you want to start feeding it vegetable matter on a daily basis. These are worms, think of them as pets, they need to be fed. All right, so this bin was produced here locally. It's obviously a basic plastic bin that you could get at any hardware store. It's produced here locally by a company called O'Donnell's Nursery, and it's got some really nice features that you won't find in your normal bin. It has some vents to aerate the bin, and there's actually a channel way down in the bottom that allows the water to seep through for when we're making worm tea. But if you look close in there, you can see our little worm friends doing their job. So composting your waste not only reduces waste in the landfill, but it can be a big benefit for your garden or your houseplants. And this little unit here is the quickest, easiest way to make worm tea. You can use worm castings to put in around your plants, but this worm tea you can use to basically water in a fertilizer for any plants. And it's as simple as this. I've got a bucket of water. I'm going to pour this bucket of water into this unit. Now you wouldn't want to leave this in here or your worms will indeed drown. So you immediately use this handy little spigot here to start draining out that water. And look at that. That is what's called compost tea or worm tea, and it is full of all the rich, good fertilizers that come in compost. So in the bucket it looks really dark, but as you see it kind of coming out of the spigot, it definitely looks like a weak tea, and that should be about the color as you're pouring it on your plants. So this is a little bit dark for the tea, and so I'm going to dilute it with a little bit of water before I pour it on my plants. Again, I want it to look like a weak tea. And we'll talk a little bit later about how you can also age and aerate tea. So our tea is ready, and I'm going to actually use it to fertilize some of our native perennials. And when you're fertilizing native perennials with compost tea, you want to give them a nice, good drink. And this is here is our native ribes. This is our favorite bin. We made it out of reclaimed plywood. We do a lot of education around plastic, and we really wanted to figure out a way to compost without buying new plastic to do so. We find that the plywood bin actually keeps a really nice moisture content, and we've had this bin going for about 4 years and it hasn't broken down yet. This bin will show that there are lots of decomposers in your composting system. We have sow bugs, we have slugs, we have lots of different things eating our garbage in this bin, and it's a really great rodent-proof way to do composting in your backyard. So this bin is actually our main source of fertilizer. Compost tea is the only thing we use to fertilize this backyard, and this is where we get most of our compost tea. And it's as simple as this. You grab a handful of worm castings and put them in a bucket for starters. I try to make sure that I'm not going to get a bunch of worms in there because I don't want them to drown. And so what you're seeing here in my hand is primarily worm poo. We haven't actually put any soil in here at all. So everything that is dark and crumbly here is really, really great worm castings. That's about the right amount for a batch. So these are all the things you need. You need your aerator, some water to add in, your bucket that has compost in it, and a rock to hold down the end of the aerator tube. So I've already got my compost in there. My aerator stays out of the bucket, and the tube goes in and gets weighted down with a rock, and then we add the water. So we aerate for about 24 hours. This builds all of the good bacteria that live in soil, then have an opportunity to sort of be invigorated. And you'll see lots of funky things float to the top, and I tend to just reach my hand in there and skim them off. Some people definitely put their compost in an old sock and then make the tea like this. And you can make this in as big a batches as you want to, as long as your tube is long enough and you've got enough compost. Here we have a basic rolling composter. This is a very common way that people get started with composting, and this is a particularly good one. It's called the EnviroCycle, and it's made in Canada out of recycled plastic. You will quickly find that having one composting bin makes it hard sometimes to harvest any compost out of it to put in your garden. So we really recommend that people actually get 2 of these bins, which can end up being a little expensive. But you want one that you're actively adding new kitchen waste into and you can do some yard waste into it. And then you want one that's actively cooking and getting compost ready to go into your garden. Another nice thing about these units is they're very easy to turn. And the more you turn your composter, the quicker your compost cooks. When your compost is ready to go, you just heave it off of the base and roll it into position where you want to use the compost. The bins that we have for composting food are closer to the house, and our composting systems for dealing with yard waste are further back in the garden. Let's go check them out. We have 2 piles in the garden that deal with our yard waste. Let me explain the differences. This is where we deal with all of our soft green waste, basically our weeds in the garden. And we don't even harvest any compost out of this pile. It's just a place for us to reduce that green waste. We found out that the green waste that's collected curbside actually goes to our landfill and is used as daily cover, which is not a good use of green waste. So we decompose it here in our shambling mound. Some gardeners might not want a shambling mound in their property, and so when these winter weeds kind of break down a little bit, you can use this as a mulch to spread around your garden. If you want to get a brush pile like this started, all we really did was we took our big woody debris and we actually kind of lined it up. We stomped up and down on it, and we covered it with straw or leaves, whatever you sort of have around. And then we went to the grocery store and we bought some potatoes. We put a handful of compost and a potato in and around each of the piles, and now the piles have actually naturalized and regrow potatoes without us even seeding them every year. Right in here we have put in some potatoes, and here's a little one growing. Thanks for visiting our Sustainability Center. I hope that you learned something new. If you want to visit us on the web, go to www.sustainablefairfax.org and tell us about your success.